No.
Life isn't always simple, but eating Heart Smart for American Heart Month is. Look for displays of heart-healthy California walnuts at Jewel Osco.
Programming on WTTW is made possible in part by Allstate, supporting the communities where we live and work. WTTW programming originates from the Renee Crown Public Media Center.
Hey, bud. How's pajama day?
It means school picture day.
No.
Life isn't always simple, but eating Heart Smart for American Heart Month is. Look for displays of heart-healthy California walnuts at Jewel Osco.
It's finally here. It's the Viewer's Choice Bowl. WTTW's most popular shows were pitted against each other head-to-head in an epic battle to find out which one viewers liked best. After 5 rounds of voting on WTTW.com, we'll present your top 2. It's Call the Midwife versus Endeavor. Who will be your number 1? Tune in Sunday at 2 to find out.
On Masterpiece.
Me is no free. Such relief to have a true gentleman come to us as overseer.
I will need you all to work 7 days a week from now on.
We'll be free, no. Just like you.
The Long Song on Masterpiece.
Sunday at 9 on WTTW.
Hi, Chicago. I'm Destiny. You're watching WTTW.
Tonight's presentation of Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Mollenhauer Progressive Philanthropic Fund in honor of Ida Mollenhauer, supporting quality journalism.
Good evening and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. We'll be joined by our Week in Review guests in just a moment, but first, some of today's top stories. Well, the week has come and gone and still no deal between Chicago Public Schools and the Chicago Teachers Union on in-person learning. The union today announced it would reject what CPS laid out as their, quote, last best and final offer. The two sides are reportedly stalemated on how quickly to vaccinate teachers, with CTU saying CPS's pledge of 1,500 vaccinations per week is not enough. Later this afternoon, Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Chicago Public Health Commissioner Dr. Allison Arwady took to social media to blast the CTU's position on vaccines.
In order to implement CTU's plan, we would have to stop vaccine distribution across the entire city for everyone else, literally. CTU says, give the vaccine to our members and only our members, not even other people within CPS. Not the lunchroom workers, custodians, building engineers, and not the special education classroom aides. No one else within CPS.
And state public health officials report more than 3,600 new COVID-19 cases today, with 83 additional deaths. That makes for a statewide total of 1.14 million cases, including 19,526 deaths. Bundle up if you haven't already. An Arctic blast is set to park itself over the region through the weekend and into next week. The National Weather Service is predicting wind chills as low as 25 below zero over the weekend. Warming centers are open in Chicago and Cook County Monday through Friday, generally from 9 to 5, but they're not expected to be open over the weekend. And joining us now for the Week in Review are Rick Pearson of the Chicago Tribune, Mauricia Pena of Block Club Chicago, Craig Delamore of WBBM News Radio, and Nader Issa of the Chicago Sun-Times. First tonight, no news, no deal. Negotiations between Mayor Lori Lightfoot and the Chicago Teachers Union broke down, so what is next? The mayor's frustration has been palpable all week. Take a look.
This is about our kids. This is about our kids. It's about our kids. For me, that's the only thing that matters. Time's out. Runway, done. And we need a deal today.
Nader Issa, hot off the presses, you just filed a story within the last 5 minutes. Where do these negotiations stand right now?
I think they stand in a similar place they did yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. It's just there hasn't been much movement. And I think the mayor, we just heard her, that was 2 days ago or yesterday maybe, she said we need a deal today. Well, it's the next day and there's still no deal. And it's not looking like there's going to be a deal this weekend. And so the mayor has kept issuing these ultimatums. We need a deal. We're going to lock out teachers if they don't show up. And then she keeps drawing this line in the sand and then stepping over it. And so negotiations are in a sensitive place right now. I think they're close. From everything I hear, the whole package, they are close. This isn't something that like 2019, they were miles apart. The timeline for when to return is a big issue right now. The CTU is looking at having teachers and staff back by March 8th is what I reported today. And CPS is looking at somewhere closer to February 15th, February 22nd, and March 1st. So they're only a couple weeks apart from each other. Then there's these issues of accommodations for members who work or who live with medically vulnerable household members. I think that gets solved if they do push it back a couple weeks and let people get vaccinated. And so it's in a tough place. I don't know that there really needs to be this lockout or this strike, but it looks like that's where we're headed.
Well, Rick Pearson, the mayor, said a week ago that if teachers didn't show up, that the CPS was going to lock them out of their online learning platform, the Google or the Microsoft platform that they use. Now she's saying it again. If they don't show up Monday, they're not going to be able to teach online. Is that an empty threat or for real, you think?
Well, I think Nader touched on it, the fact that she keeps drawing these lines in the sand and then never follows through with them. And that, I think, has only given more impetus for CTU to keep pushing for what it wants. I mean, I certainly think there's a lot of frustration on all sides. Certainly, you know, parents want to see kids back in school if done safely. With teachers, the fact of accommodations, as Nader mentioned, accommodations for those teachers who have special at-risk family members. You also have the children coming to school, and while there's not a great preponderance of those who have been found to have COVID, they do carry it. And what about those families as well? I mean, there's a lot of things at play here, and we haven't even talked about the fact of there's no schedule yet for high school students to return.
Right, and they might not return at all this year. Craig Dellamore, you heard the mayor talking about vaccines. The CPS has offered 1,500 vaccinations per week. The mayor is saying if we're to give what the CTU wants, then no one else is going to get vaccinated in the city. Is that true?
Whether it's exactly true or not, certainly the bulk of the shots would be going to the teachers. And it seems as if that's one of those areas where they could come a bit closer. But, you know, sometimes it seems as if this is a game of chicken, but the children and the parents are passengers in the cars that are hurtling toward each other. And, you know, I think in the end, it's going to be the parents who are going to be in the driver's seat because either they're going to send their children to the schools or they're not. And that will probably be what really drives how many teachers are where, is how many parents need to send their children in versus how many parents are afraid to send their children in.
It's a game of chicken, but the cars have been stuck in park for a couple of weeks instead of barreling toward each other. Mauricia Pena, what about parents? I mean, where do they fall on this? We saw statistics over the last several weeks that, especially in black and brown communities, parents were reticent to send their kids back.
Yeah, I'm hearing a mix of things from parents. So, you know, there are parents who are hesitant to send their kids back, and there are also parents who are essential workers who don't have the luxury of staying home, and so they need that childcare. They need the in-person learning. So it's a mix from what I'm hearing from parents.
Nader Issa, what about the politics at play here? As this goes on, the teachers union is actively in Springfield pushing the governor to sign a bill that would broaden what they can strike over. Take us inside the politics at play here.
Yeah, so that law you're mentioning, it's a provision in Educational Labor Relations Law, Section 4.5 of the Illinois Educational Labor Relations Act. It's been in place since 1995. The state Senate repealed it a few weeks ago. And what it would do basically is return a lot of bargaining rights to the CTU over issues that fall outside of the sort of bread and butter labor issues like pay and benefits. It just got sent to the governor's desk yesterday. It's not clear yet whether he's going to sign it, whether he's basically going to insert himself into the middle of this CTU CPS battle. But if he does sign it, it gives the CTU a huge, huge leg up in this fight, because just last week, there were a couple suburban districts, one of them Cicero, went and sought an injunction against its school district, making the same exact argument that the CTU took and failed in the same court. And so the difference there is that Section 4.5 that has been repealed, but not officially by the governor's signature.
So Nader,
so it's something to keep an eye on.
If you had to guess, will there be teachers in schools on Monday? Will there be online learning? Will there be in-person learning? Will there be a deal, or none of it?
I've been trying not to make predictions or bets. Maybe we can do some Super Bowl squares over it. But I don't know. Every day, every hour, this thing changes. My guess is that there is not going to be a deal over the weekend. Now, I'm sure in a couple of days I'll be wrong about that. But if there is no deal, the teachers aren't going to be showing up on Monday. CPS is now demanding preschool and special education cluster teachers show up. They're likely not going to show up. CPS has said that'll trigger lockouts. They'll be blocked from teaching remotely. And then the CTU has said that would trigger a strike. It's the same exact situation we were in last week, same time last week. It's just to be determined if the mayor follows through this time.
Cut and paste the story from last Friday. It seems to be the same. Let's move on to a couple other items in the news. The governor announced that state lawmakers will get vaccines this week in Phase 1B. Here's what he had to say.
I'm waiting my turn. I think it's important for many of us to set an example in that way. Many legislators asked if they could be vaccinated because there is so much work that needs to be done. When they went to Springfield just a few weeks ago for the lame duck session, there were a number of members who contracted COVID-19.
Craig Dellamore, what's the argument for lawmakers jumping up a couple of spots and being eligible with other essential workers to get vaccinated?
Some of them, and they are split on this, feel that they are essential workers, and frankly, they have to meet in groups. Now, they met the last time they went to Springfield or for a full session. They met in a convention center, so they can socially distance themselves. But they feel that that's why they should move up. They're essential workers. But you are also, this is sort of like when they raise their own salaries. Some of them are saying, we won't take it, and some of them are quite willing to because they're honestly afraid.
Rick Pearson, obviously vaccinations have not been as fast as most people will like. What is the status in Illinois in terms of people being able to navigate signing up, in terms of everybody eligible in 1B being able to get an appointment?
It's a mess. I mean, in some respects, I'm surprised people haven't likened it to signing up for unemployment on the Department of Employment Security website. I mean, you actually have third-party vendors with no association to government, city or state, who are actually basically setting up their own apps to try to help people navigate this to be able to set up appointments. The rollout is a mess, and everybody will acknowledge that.
Mauricio Pena, the rollout across the nation, statistics have shown that communities of color have lagged behind, even though public officials have talked about the priority of because they've been hit the hardest. Have those numbers improved at all? And what about in Chicago?
They've only in Chicago. They've only improved slightly since the first reporting. The majority last week saw a majority of white communities on the north side getting these vaccines, while the south and west sides were left behind. And it's kind of a parallel of how testing was rolled out in the city. You saw more people on the north side getting tested, and then eventually you saw testing sites coming to the southwest sides, south and the west sides, and we're seeing a similar rollout now with vaccinations. It's difficult for people on the south and west sides to get vaccinated. And only slightly, I think the latest numbers showed like about 19% of Latinos getting vaccinated. And yeah, they've only improved slightly. So there's a long way to go in terms of bringing equity to the distribution of vaccinations.
All right, let's turn to some city political news. Craig Delamore, the mayor's city council floor leader, Gilbert Villegas, Alderman Gilbert Villegas, steps down after a little over a year and a half on the job. To put that in perspective, Mayor Emanuel's city council floor leader, Alderman Pat O'Connor, was in it for the entirety of Emanuel's 8-year term. What's going on behind the scenes here?
Well, I think that the mayor's own sometimes combative nature has made it a little bit more difficult for Gilbert Villegas to manage the kind of votes that she needs. She says it's because she won't buy votes. In other words, she's not going to do the kind of horse trading that might have gone on before. But she also is not afraid to lash out at the alderman. She also, frankly, on her inauguration day, said, you know, we're going to end a lot of the practices that you've been enjoying. So, and also he didn't have the same, Villegas didn't have the same affection from all of the members that O'Connor did. I think Michelle Harris, who is going to take over as the floor leader, is probably more liked and well respected than Villegas was. Not that there was anything wrong with him; he was fine, but he and the mayor had differences on a number of policies.
And certainly Michelle Harris, the 8th Ward alderman who was named as the new floor leader, she was loyal to Rahm Emanuel. She's a stalwart. She is well liked. She's been around there for a long time. Rick Pearson, do you think this improves Mayor Lightfoot's odds of getting more difficult pieces of legislation, future budgets with tax hikes through City Council, or is her base in City Council eroding?
No, I think it helps. I mean, it's certainly, I mean, Gil, as Craig said, you know, Gil's a good guy. Everybody appreciates him. But being floor leader is a monster job, and trying to sell something. And I think in some respects, with knowing Gil, he was trying to sell stuff he didn't necessarily believe in because he was tasked with being the floor leader. So I think now with Michelle Harris, you've got somebody who's more in sync, someone who does have a broader field of respect. I think it helps the mayor, but still, you're talking about initiatives that face a strong uphill climb.
All right, let's move on to some other political news. Illinois senior U.S. Senator Dick Durbin takes the reins as chair of the powerful Senate Judiciary Committee. Illinois Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger joins 10 other GOP members in voting to oust conspiracy theorist Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from committees. Meanwhile, Kinzinger launches a pact to take on Trump-supporting Republicans, and a shovel date has been set for the Obama Presidential Center. Rick Pearson, Dick Durbin takes over as the Judiciary Committee chairman. How come it took so long when the Democrats have ostensibly been in charge of the Senate for going on a month now?
Well, part of it is the fact that the elections in Georgia produced that 50-50 split, and you had to rely on the fact of Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell to try to reach agreement on organizing principles. They actually went back to decades ago, the last time of a 50-50 split. McConnell, of course, his issue before any organizing was that Democrats did not get rid of the filibuster, the 60-vote rule. And finally, when two Democrats acceded to the fact that they would not support an end to the filibuster, McConnell dropped that demand, and it was easy to get the organizing in shape. But that having been said, you're absolutely right. Basically 2 months into a new administration, and you have a committee chairman who are still the Republican leftovers from the previous
And
administration.
you still got an Attorney General, Merrick Garland, nominee that needs to have hearings and be confirmed, which Durbin told us this week. It's probably not going to happen next week, but maybe the week after. Nader Issa, Senate has an impeachment trial coming up next week. President Trump's lawyers say he will not testify. Who do you think will testify, and how do you think this is going to go?
Well, I don't know that it's clear right now who's willing to step up and voice on the side of the former president. We saw his entire legal team quit last week because he wanted them to make an argument that they didn't believe in, that the election was stolen from him. I'm not quite sure exactly who will step up to testify. We've seen that there are even some Republicans in the House and the Senate who aren't sticking their necks out yet to say that they'll vote to acquit the former president. And so if they are even hesitant, the people who've defended him the strongest for the past 5 years, it's going to be surprising to see anyone step up too strongly and defend him. And I don't know that there really is a defense for his actions.
But as you mentioned,
if I can just add something here, that Dick Durbin earlier today made a point that I think needs to be considered more often here. This is a very different kind of trial, if you can call it that, because the members are the witnesses. They were there.
Yeah.
They saw the remarks. So the number of people who actually have to testify might be very different, because a number of them could themselves testify if they wanted to, but they absolutely knew what happened. And Dick Durbin said he may not be the one to talk about and decide the witnesses. That's the managers of the House managers and the president's own legal team. But he said he wants to make sure that the truth of what happened that day comes out.
And as it stands right now, they would need 17 Republican members of the Senate to convict. They do not have anywhere near that, at least folks saying on the record how they're going to vote at this point. But we'll have to wait and see what happens next week. But let's talk about Congressman Adam Kinzinger, a Republican from Illinois. He was one of only 11 Republicans to vote to oust controversial freshman Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from committees. Here is what they had to say.
I didn't hear an apology personally. Maybe she did say it, but the bottom line is, I think until she publicly disavows all her comments from the past and says, everything going forward, I don't take it too seriously.
There were 11 that voted against me yesterday, and that's something that our leaders should be very upset about.
Rick Pearson, I mean, what's the practical effect of kicking her off these committees?
Well, I mean, it is a reprimand, and certainly one of the unique things is the fact that you did have majority Democrats reprimanding a minority minority member by stripping her of committees. But you did have the fact that you did have Republican crossovers such as Adam Kinzinger. She is talking about basically today saying, well, serving on Democratic-run committees would be a waste of time. And she basically said in social media that those who voted to oust her from those assignments were morons because they gave her more free publicity.
And as Kinzinger has said, that he believes that she's someone that's really not a serious policy person out there to get publicity, build her brand, become a social media star. Mauricio Pena, is there a risk with all this attention on her that maybe we in the media, folks in the political arena are elevating her beyond what she deserves to be elevated?
I think there's always a risk of giving extra attention to someone, especially for controversial comments. And so I think, it's incumbent on us as an industry to be extra cautious of how we cover things like these and the things that she says. It only elevates some of the conspiracy theories that are, that have been at the fringe. And so I think, journalists, reporters, everyone just has to be mindful of how they do cover what she says and the fallout of, what happened in Congress.
But can I say here, she is an elected member of Congress. We're just coming off January 6th and an insurrection that occurred. to have someone in that chamber who has espoused the beliefs that she has, that 9/11 was fake, that mass shootings were false flags set up by gun proponents, to
basically threaten the
support
lives of the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, on top of that, and then even in her remarks yesterday on the floor of the House, liking the media to QAnon as spreaders of lies and fake. This is a member of Congress. She has an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America.
And which is why this is kind of an extraordinary story. But Rick, you know, Kinzinger is one of the few Republicans speaking out against her and Trump-supporting Republicans. He started this PAC. Meanwhile, the Illinois GOP is trying to figure out what direction it's going to go. How is all that going to play out?
Well, the state GOP, unlike other state Republican parties that issued censures against members of Congress, Republican members that voted for Trump's impeachment, state GOP today issued a statement saying they disagree with his vote on Trump's impeachment, but they're saying that should be something that the voters ultimately decide on their elected officials. They want to move forward, and they have their vote for chairman on Saturday.
And so maybe they're not bringing the hammer down on him as hard as some other state parties are bringing the hammer down on Republicans that have spoken out against Trump. Craig Dellimore, if you had to guess, will the Illinois GOP pick someone that's more Trumpy, that's more moderate, that's maybe a bridge between the two?
I think that's what they would like to think that they would do, but at the moment there are only really two people who are trying for it, and it's the same tug of war that existed that's existed for the last 4 years between those who are more conservative and more favorable toward Donald Trump, and those who are more moderate and want to have more centrist positions. At the moment, it seems like that. Whether there's going to be some compromise candidate coming through, I don't know. I mean, the fact that Tim Schneider, who is the outgoing chairman, wanted to leave tells you that they haven't really found their direction yet.
So it's kind of a battle for the party statewide and national. Rick, we only have a couple seconds. This PAC that Kinzinger started, how successful do you think it'll be?
You know, that's an open question. Certainly there's any number of Republicans that do not view themselves as Trump Republicans. And I think what Kinzinger is counting on is that kind of what you've seen, the erosion of the suburbs. Some of that's demographic and ideological, but some of that also is just Republicans that used to own the suburbs of them saying enough of Trump. But when you look at that as kind of this PAC versus Donald Trump and the money that he can raise, and the fact that, as MTG said today, Trump owns this party. It's
going to be an uphill battle, and as he said, he feels pretty lonely on that hill right now. All right, we're out of time, so our many, many thanks to Rick Pearson, Mauricio Pena, Craig Dellimore, and Nader Issa. And that is our show for this Friday night. We're back at 7 o'clock all next week. And now for the Weekend Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and warm, and have a great weekend.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Office.